TSibs with you tonight. It's Ask LG with LG McDonald, and we are counting down the minutes until we get, well, actually it's still hours, until we get to NHL 18. You see the counter on my game with an hour and 59 minutes left to go. Hope you folks are all getting ready to play this game tonight, as we will also be live with you later on to do sort of a release party with it as well. Hope you'll be able to tune in for that. Hi, everyone. TSibs with you. And as we've done before, we have asked Brody McDonald to come on with us. LG McDonald is with us tonight to talk about everything Season 5 and what's coming up for Season 6, and even talk about the new release of the game as well. So we have Brody with us tonight. And Brody, how's it going, buddy?
I'm doing really well, really well. I'm actually playing the game right now as we speak, so doing some HUD solo challenges as I wait for some people to get on to play some ESHL. So
lucky man on the Xbox side who you know, thank you guys have it lucky over there to be able to get early access. It's one of the benefits of being, at least being on Xbox. I'm sure you've had it even longer than that, since you're one of the game changers for the game itself. But at least on the Xbox side, I mean, I don't want you to talk about it for too long, but how do you feel so far about what you're seeing?
Definitely some noticeable improvements from the beta. I know the beta played well in some areas and really poor in other areas, so definitely some noticeable changes. So far, so good. I've got about, I think I'm up to 22 or 23 ESHL games in now. So it plays decent. Played a little bit of HUD online as well too. So yeah, so far I'm liking it. There's definitely some changes that still need to come and some improvements need to come. There's definitely some goalie issues right now. I think some goalie glitching and like kind of flinching, which is kind of going on. So I think once that can improve, the goalie guys will enjoy the game a lot better as well. So,
well, guys on the PSN side who picked up the Young Stars edition will have access tonight, as we said, in a little less than 2 hours. If you bought the regular edition, it'll be out midnight on the 15th, and we'll be on after we're done with our show here with Brody. We're going to jump on around 11:30 or so to do sort of a release party as well. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back here on the LeagueGaming.com YouTube channel. You know, Season 5, you know, the woes of a summer season. I guess I'd start off by saying, just because of what I know a lot of managers had to deal with, and you know, certainly there were a lot of players who signed up and a lot of guys who played, and we had a heck of a season, at least on the AHL side, with Manitoba coming almost out of nowhere to winning the Cup. But certainly a lot of managers had to deal with having to use a lot of ECUs, at least on the AHL side. I've heard tale of the same woe over on the NHL side as well, and I don't know if Xbox felt the same thing, but that's one of the bigger issues, and certainly not an LG issue, but one that we hadn't felt in the first summer season that we did this on PSN side. I mean, if you had to guess, what would you attribute that to? Why do we have so many guys who signed up and then, you know, maybe vacations or whatever, just didn't have their availability later on in the season?
Yeah, I don't know. Summer season is really odd at times. I find that when it comes to staff and stuff, we have we have less issues and less bullshit to deal with during the summer season. But it tends to be the season that tends to be the most stressful for management, especially if you have a competitive team and you're going down the stretch. Because, like you said it best, there are definitely a lot of factors that can contribute to being successful if you go deep in the playoffs. I know myself too. We got to the finals last year in the AHL on Xbox. My team did. And the second round of the playoffs, both our goalies were on vacation. So with how strict the ECU rules are and stuff, it was very difficult for us to make do and get to where we were. Luckily, I believe we got to a Game 7, and in Game 7, our number one goalie it was about 40 minutes from home, drove home, played in Game 7 while on vacation, luckily for us, to help us get through that series. But definitely summer season is interesting. The other side of it too is summer season tends to be like the break for a lot of our traditional management that have been around for a long time. So a lot of those guys tend to step away just for that season and take a break, which brings in a lot of newer management. So a little bit of inexperience at times, and it tends to be one of the most difficult seasons for management, which also makes it very difficult to kind of get to test the waters of what management really is if summer season is your first season as management. So
right.
It is summertime. There are vacations. Family definitely comes first. But there's also like people just kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? It's like, well, the new game's out in certain amount of time. This season doesn't matter as much to me because the next game will be out, blah blah blah. So I think there's a little bit of that going on as well too, which can cause some issues that we did see at both levels.
And in the end, we had some good playoffs as usual. The talent, I think, obviously was better overall in the AHL, even with a lot of guys maybe not signing up because it was a summer season. But we're starting to see that flux of talent that we talked about in Season 3, Season 4. Obviously, you're more experienced with this. With the years that you've been doing this, plus with the Xbox side and what kind of growing pains they went through. So we've done this, I think, every time we've talked, but let's talk a little bit about what you saw on the PSN side, and is this kind of reminiscent of what you guys went through the first 4 or 5 seasons on the Xbox side, or are there any differences in how these seasons went off for the PSN portion of LG?
It does take a while for everything to kind of balance out, right? For the cream to rise up and for the leagues to balance out and people to want to be in certain positions. I know one of the complaints that we always get on the PlayStation side, and it's something we're trying to address this season, is in regards to the level of talent that takes AHL management when those players likely should be somewhere in the NHL or at a higher tier. The Xbox League's been going on for so long, we're coming into our 28th season, so literally like Season 6 was 22 seasons ago, which is roughly almost 7 years ago, right? So
right.
When we go back 7 years, a lot was different then as well, right? The game was different. The league in general was growing so much, so there was no base to draw from. Where I find like the PlayStation side has the benefit that this is already an established website. It's an established league. There's Xbox players that play kind of both leagues, and so the growth of the PlayStation League will be way better than what the growth of the Xbox League ever was.
Sure.
At the same time, too, we're also benefiting from having some people that are double hatting, right? So they're playing in both leagues. So we bring experience back and forth in regards to rule sets, team building, so on and so forth. So I feel the PlayStation League has been kind of going the direction I always wanted the Xbox League to go in the beginning. So it's getting better and better and better every single season. Last season we introduced the 60 full CHL teams, which makes a big difference. We expanded, pretty much the league. We doubled the size of the entire league. The CHL with 60 teams is the same size as the NHL and AHL combined. Maybe not this season because we did add our 31st team to both leagues, but still, to be able to expand at that rate is drastic. And to see the number of training camp players and talent we keep bringing to the site and league is pretty impressive, right? So the PlayStation League, I find, there's still growing pains. There's still things going on. We still have new staff members coming in each season that are learning the ropes. They're kind of getting used to things, handling the sheer volume of questions and things that have to be addressed in a timely manner. So until we get consistent staff that stays here for a long period of time, you're going to still see some of those growing pains as well. Obviously, we're pretty lucky. We have a few guys that have been here since for a couple seasons, so we're growing and building on that that success. So overall, I'm pretty happy with how the PlayStation League goes. There's a lot of new faces, a lot of people that are really appreciated for what we're doing here at LG and all the things we continue to add to the league and to the site, which is kind of nice. Some of the Xbox guys have been around for a long period of time, tend to have that been there, done that kind of mentality right. At times, which is okay. We're still here for them as well, and we definitely want those guys to be part of our league and part of our site. So it's important as well. But I definitely think the PlayStation League is heading in the right direction, and I'm really happy to see kind of the direction that it's going and the excitement and how things are been building. And it's nice to sit back and watch it grow and continue to get better each and every season.
Let me talk a little bit about and get your impression of how things went in the NHL with the changed schedule, the one that's going to pretty much be in place for the AHL this season. And I believe the CHL, am I correct? They're going to be going to a similar schedule? How did that work out in the NHL?
So it's kind of funny. I really wanted to try this for summer season on the Xbox side too, and they kind of balked at it and were kind of like, well, we don't want to do a change. Right. But that's kind of that same old school mentality that they don't really like change, right? So to see how the PlayStation League handled that change, I think was really good. Lots of positive feedback. A lot of players really liked it. I think some of our managers at times said it was a little bit difficult at times in regards to scheduling and getting everyone into their games and such. But I do think that overall, the break that everyone got to have from week to week. Having that extra day off where you're not doing anything, where you can do trades and so on, I think was a breath of fresh air. Right. The kind of cool thing too is the CHL media on the Xbox side is unbelievable. It's probably on par with some of the best media we have here. They're doing live commentary events, they're doing tons of shows, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And it's the same core group of guys. And one of the things that they're excited about is, like you just said, we are going to switch the CHL over to a similar schedule as well. Mm-hmm. They're going to be doing games of the week that'll be live commentary every Thursday at 8:30, 9 o'clock. Right. So they're going to be doing a 15-minute pregame, so they'll look at the lineups, talk about everything, and then do a 15-minute postgame, or maybe they'll bring in the winning team manager, whoever it may be, just to talk to. So we're getting new opportunities here, having that Thursday as a blank slot. Mm-hmm. The other thing too is the ESHL or Esports League that we're going to fire back up here and get some information out about on Friday is going to use that Thursday time slot to give teams more prime time rather than them having to play late at night or after LG games, after the league. We're trying to give them some prime time real estate on the website on Thursdays during the night, so we can have Thursdays as rival night, so to speak, and kind of give them a little bit more spotlight as well too. It also gives, like I said, I think it gives our managers the break they need. You have the Friday, you have the Thursday, the Friday, the Saturday, kind of off to do trades, kind of not have to get your players together, not have to not have to organize it, which I think is kind of a break in itself, which is kind of nice.
And I think the discussion that went on in the AHL, I think some guys were talking about the times, and it's funny. You wind up getting almost a balance of guys who feel like the late games are too late because they've got to be up early for work, and then there are guys on the West Coast who are saying the early games are too early for them, and so I think the thing is you're never going to fully satisfy everybody with it, but I think a lot of guys, before this was done, did want to try and get rid of the one game on one day, and I think that really makes a difference. And the big part of it, just because I've done management minimally, but I've done some, to be able to have that extra day, to be able to make trades or do whatever you want to do with your personnel, to have another day to make those decisions, I think it's going to help out some of the issue that you were talking about earlier, which is guys who don't have a lot of experience. That extra day could help them take the time to figure out what they need to do, to consult with their AGMs, to consult with their owner. And I think when you have that ability to take a little more time to make a decision, that could add to, that could help with the overall decision-making for management who doesn't really have a lot of experience.
I would agree with that, too. That's a very good point. I never really considered before, too, to give that extra day for that type of stuff as well. And also, my game plan is to continue my weekly updates and stuff. My weekly updates will likely be Wednesday nights now, which will give you guys Thursday, Friday, Saturday to kind of look over what I said, kind of implement what's going on, make some adjustments, and go from there. It also gives our staff guys an extra day to ensure our complaints are done, the trades are approved, all that stuff. So that extra just maintenance day for us as staff is going to really help, because our guys can work really hard on Wednesday night, do some stuff Thursday night, do some stuff Friday, maybe Friday night, and then maybe Saturday and Sunday, which are weekends where they're used to being busy, won't be as busy anymore, which will just kind of make the league flow a lot better and just be organized a lot better, which is kind of nice as well too. So it's a nice change. And you are right, it's hard to please everyone. We have people from all over the place. Recent discussions, Trish and I had with some potential sponsorships and stuff. We were looking at demographics on the website right now, and the number one place where our players are playing from is Ontario. Number 2 is Pennsylvania. So both of those are our Eastern time zones, but we still have a relative number of players that are playing from the West Coast, right, or even from the most extreme East Coast. Well, Newfoundland's an hour and a half time difference from the Eastern time zone, which is right. It's shitty for those players as well too. So I tried my best to incorporate as much as possible. The AHL times are going to be adjusted completely from what we're used to right now. You'll see games on the quarter 2 rather than the half an hour. So you'll see 9:45, 10:45, 8:45 as your AHL game times. Mm-hmm. The way the schedule is likely going to work out is teams are only going to play one 8:45 game a week. So it's only one. Yeah, it's early, which sucks for West Coast guys. But there's going to be 3 or 4 10:45 games, which is slightly later for those West Coast guys. Right. But not crazy late, in my opinion, for our typical AHL player that are used to the 10:30. So that's kind of my hope, is to kind of incorporate as much as possible and get as much in as we can, and also be able to use that condensed week, which is a major thing. Currently, the AHL schedule is done, so you'll see. I'm pretty sure how it's going to work out, or how it has to work out, is every week there's a day with three games. That day is either going to be Monday or Tuesday. No other day will have 3 games. That's kind of how it's set up. It's going to be in the middle of the week.
Right.
Monday and Tuesday tend to be the better days for availability. Sunday's usually really good too, but a lot of the really good shows are on Sunday night. Like, people are watching Walking Dead, or they're into Game of Thrones, or whatever it may be. So Sunday was kind of a day we wanted to stay away from,
right?
Simply based on that stuff as well. So I think we're going to be pretty happy with the schedule. There's obviously going to be adjustment, and like you said, Bess, like, you can't please everyone. We're trying our best just to kind of make some adjustments to kind of go from there. So, yeah, that's pretty much what the schedule looks like. And hopefully I'll have it inputted and posted within the next week.
And I know you have you certainly put information out about the teams, about the expansion. But let's just go over it here a little bit, just to make sure that everyone understands exactly what's happening, because sometimes people miss threads, whatever, or misunderstand what they've read. So obviously Las Vegas is going to be in the NHL, but let's talk about, you can talk a little bit about that if you want to, about what the schedule looks like, and then what the AHL specifically is going to do, how many teams will be there, and then consequently, is there any change going on in the CHL for this at all? So,
yeah, so you're right. Vegas is coming to the NHL, which is nice. They're going in the Pacific Division, where they are in real life, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. The selection process we did for owners this season too, we determined that we were going to give Vegas to our best owner. So best means a lot of different things to people, right? Mm-hmm. Skill comes in a factor. League contribution makes a factor. So obviously, the gentleman who we did give Vegas to, former staff member, good member of the community, former manager, we really felt that he was definitely the number one guy we wanted to give Vegas to. So we kind of used Vegas this season as a reward, sure, for a community member that we normally don't have the opportunity to give something like that to, right? So that's how Vegas selection went down. If you read anything about the real AHL and what's going on, the AHL in this season in real life is only going to have 30 teams. Vegas and the St. Louis Blues in real life are actually sharing the Chicago Wolves. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there's no way we could simulate that. It just gets too messy and it's too much of a headache. So what the AHL is doing for 2018-2019 season is the Colorado Eagles are actually going to be the Colorado Avalanche's official affiliate, which then moves the San Antonio Rampage to the St. Louis Blues, which then leaves Vegas exclusively with the Chicago Wolves. Personally, I'm a little bit surprised to see that. They tend to have the AHL affiliates closer in distance geographically for call-up reasons. Right. So I'm a little bit surprised that Vegas took that. I kind of thought Vegas would look at Utah or look at one of the teams that were closer in their demographic. Right. But what's being said right now, what seems to be pretty much official from the AHL, is that. So essentially, what we've done in LG is we've skipped ahead a season, and we've added the we've added the Colorado Eagles. Mm-hmm. They are Colorado's official affiliate. They remain in the, I believe they're in the, what's that division called? I can't think of it.
Is that Western Central or Western Pacific?
I think it's Western Central.
Okay.
It's the one with I'm pretty sure it's the one where Chicago, Cleveland. I'm pretty sure that's Western Central.
Yes, that's what it is.
So that's where they're going to be right now as Chicago's affiliate. So what we had to do, and you're going to see this either today or tomorrow, is on the roster page, is we had to take all the San Antonio Rampage players, because they technically belong to Colorado, and we've traded all of them to the Colorado Eagles. So that Eagle roster is last season's Rampage roster. Mm-hmm. Then what we did was we took all of the Chicago Wolf players, and we traded them all to the Rampage, because those players belong to the St. Louis Blues, mm-hmm, leaving the Chicago Wolves vacant right now. If you go on the roster page, they don't even actually show up. It's kind of funny. The owner just sent me a PM saying his team's missing. Mm-hmm. They're not actually missing. The reason why they don't show up is because there's no players. So once they do a re-sign or once they add management, that team will then show up on the roster page. So the vacant team will end up being the Chicago Wolves. Will technically be vacant because they are Vegas's affiliate team. And then in the CHL, no changes to the CHL. I'm going to once again, that Thursday game will likely get moved to Tuesday, which may mean we add one 10:30 game to the CHL. I know that league tends to be a little bit younger, but at the same time, we need somewhere to move that Thursday game too. So it'll likely be Tuesday 10:30, seeing as Tuesday tends to be our best day for availability. So that'll likely be the only change we see to the CHL. There's been no additional teams, or no one's really changed in the CHL. So majority of the change tends to be the AHL. You know, like the Laval Rockets are in the Montreal Canadiens' new affiliate. They moved from St. John's. Binghamton is now the Devils affiliate, and then the Senators went to Belleville. So there's a few adjustments there, but that's pretty much it when it comes to adjustments for next season in regards to teams and stuff. So.
And now, did you say anything about the CHL, or did I miss that? Is there anything?
Yeah. So no changes to CHL at all. Just one game will get moved. So the Thursday game will get moved to, like I said, likely Tuesday 10:30 will be where that CHL game will likely end up. But yeah, no team changes, no roster changes. No team changes, no divisional moves, nothing like that. The CHL remains pretty well intact. And
again, if people didn't know, the Albany Devils have moved to Binghamton as well. The Binghamton Senator, so they're now the Binghamton Devils. Binghamton Senators are now the Belleville Senators, and the St. John's Ice Cap have now become the Laval Rockets. So I think we all knew that was coming, and so that's not a big surprise. But just check your rosters and make sure you know what team you're on, because it was a bit of a surprise to me. I don't think, because I didn't know that until I was on the Wolves, so I didn't know that that whole entire roster was moving to the Rampage. So it's interesting. I think you're right. It is interesting that they went that way. Kind of surprised that they didn't try and find somebody a little closer for Vegas, but I'm sure they have their. They may have a certain fan base already out there that they're trying to hit with those assignments.
The other thing, too, is I'm pretty sure how AHL affiliation works in real life. They're all contract positions, right? So that's why you see teams, that's why you see Laval being entered in, because the contract Montreal had with the Ice Caps is null and void, right? So I think as you may see down the road Vegas move a little bit closer, because that seems to be the tendency, right? Like, the Toronto Maple Leafs affiliate used to be out in St. John's, Newfoundland, which was a hell of a distance away from where the Leafs are. Now the Marlies are literally in Toronto. Like, the players are literally like 3 or 4 blocks away from rink to rink, which makes a big difference for emergency call-ups and stuff. So you might see Vegas make that adjustment in real life as well, too, but it's hard to say at this time. The other thing, too, that people may notice is there was a little bit of a mix-up. I gave Triz the list of teams that were changing, who was going where. Yeah. And the issue was he added the Binghamton Devils before he removed the Binghamton Senators, which actually combined the rosters. So those teams were messed up for a little while. That's why the Binghamton Devils were like a roster of like 34 players and a huge TC, is because those teams merged together by accident, which should be adjusted now. I know the BOG were working on that today just to ensure that it was all fixed up and good to go.
Hey, you mentioned one thing, and I don't want you to get too in depth with it, but I do want to hit it a little bit, just because there's been talk, obviously, about, you're always going to have people who are going to have good and bad to say about whatever the assignments were for management on either side. And obviously, we don't want to go into specific criteria, because that's not what you do. But you mentioned something that I think is a point that may need to be made to some people, that it's if you're being considered for NHL management, it's not just about whether or not your skill talent is near there. It's not whether or not you maybe have even had enough management, quote unquote, enough management experience. I think there are guys who stand out who have shown for one reason or another that they can handle the responsibility, and it's not just about play. And I think that was something that you just said before, and something that I'd like you to talk a little bit more about, because I think there's this misconception that, this guy was a hell of a player in the AHL and he was AGM a couple of times, so he should be in the NHL, and this guy who was like a mediocre player, got an NHLG ownership. How did that happen? And I think a lot of guys are misunderstanding what the criteria is, and it's not just about play. It is about other things that you do within the community and within the league that are also a factor. And I think that's a confusion point for a lot of guys.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So the PlayStation side of things, when it comes to selections on the Xbox side of things, Owner selections, I do all myself. I've been around long enough and know these guys long enough that I feel pretty comfortable making my own owner selections. The CHL, my CHL staff on Xbox does all the CHL selections. They've done a really good job. They've got a really in-depth test they use to kind of grade people. And then all the guys that are borderline bubble, they do actual interviews. They've done a really good job. So we've taken some of that stuff and implemented at the CHL level on the PlayStation side. This season, we have Rock is our new CHL director, and so far, he's been extremely active, hired a pretty solid staff, and been doing really, really well with selections. So there's not a lot of talk about what goes on the CHL level in regards to selections because it tends to be the entry level. So where it gets a little bit iffy and where people have issues is obviously with the NHL and the AHL and how that selection process works. So myself, I know a handful of the guys that are applying for these positions if they're Xbox guys. So that's kind of the only real thing I give my feedback on is if I have an NHL owner who wants to take AHL management on the PlayStation side, that tends to be the time where I step in and say, okay, guys, like maybe that's one guy we should consider that we shouldn't let the play at that tier based on how things are. The other thing too is when you compare the Xbox and the Xbox and the PlayStation leagues, the depth of player skill at the Xbox side is deeper, and it's likely because we've been around a lot longer. Some of the top tier teams too that play really competitively have always kind of said that Xbox has always had better club teams and better players anyways, which I'm not really here to debate that or start that debate. All I'm saying is for what you can see right now is the player depth on the Xbox side tends to be a lot bigger than what it is on the actual PlayStation side. So that definitely that's a factor that has to be taken into consideration when making selections. At the other side too, the staff can only select owners based on how strong the applications are. So yeah, we get a ton of applications every single season, but for people to sit back and armchair quarterback all the decisions made by staff, at the end of the day, if you have an issue with people who are being selected, why didn't you apply for ownership? Why didn't you get your buddy who's a better player? Why don't you step up to the plate instead of complaining all the time about the quality of owners that are being selected? Why don't you step up and do a better job yourself? Right. You hit the nail on the head. I think that we do want really good people in these positions as well as skill. And the one thing that's always kind of like confused me and I never really been able to wrap my head around is why negativity, poor attitude, kind of that piss poor mentality that people have tends to go hand in hand with top tier talent. Like we have a lot of people here that have a lot of ego and have a lot of issues and just aren't really good people. So then they step in and have the expectation that they should just be handed things because they're a good player. Right. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case. We're the #1 league in the world for a reason. There's no league that does what we do or even compete what we do. So if you want to be a part of our league, well, then be part of our league, but be part of our league for the right reasons and don't be an idiot about it. And there's the rare guys. I know I have some pretty good friends that are in NHL ownership that have been around for a long time that are actually good people. You can have good discussions with them. There's no egos. They're here for the right reasons. They build strong teams, and they're the best kind. They're the best type of people we want for those positions. So we can't really get to a point where we just filter all of our best players to the NHL because we do run into issues. And obviously there were some cheating issues too. There was a ton of guys sitting on the no management list that are strong people. They're strong players, they're strong managers. They did good jobs, but they got busted doing shady shit. So unfortunately, those guys are kind of wrote themselves off, and it's going to weaken the strength of the league at management for the next little while until we can build up new people and bring new players in. But at the same time, we're not going to sacrifice the integrity of the league just because we want better skilled people. Right. The other consideration is if you look at the AHL rosters right now, there's not a ton of players under contract, which means the AHL is built strictly from bidding. And the issue with that is the AHL bidding comes after NHL bidding. So you could say that a lot of the top talent gets picked through NHL bidding, of course, unless a few people sign up a little bit later, which happens and so on, which is fine. But what I'm saying is the level of talent that goes into AHL bidding isn't nearly as strong as the level of talent that goes into NHL bidding. So when you go to build an AHL team, you're building basically from bidding. So if you take a player that's a top NHL player or was had 120 points last year in the AHL, went for $7 million, whatever the criteria may be that the BOG are following right now, and you give him a free management position, you're giving that team such an advantage and such an edge over everyone else because of that one individual player is such a strong player that team's going to be better simply for having that player, which you don't necessarily see 100% at the NHL level because of how the talent is spread out through bidding. Right. So that's kind of where the criteria is. I told the BOG straight up, this is how I'm doing selections on Xbox for the AHL. We're pretty much on we're a little bit more lax on the Xbox side because we have a different depth. We have more player depth in the AHL than what we actually have on the PlayStation side. So there are some players that are better players that are taking management on the Xbox side that would never be management on the PlayStation side in the AHL simply based on depth. Right. And once again, depth changes from season to season. Like each season, like last season in the PlayStation, there was 2,400 players in the CHL. That's a ton of players in the CHL, and that's a ton of guys that could be new to ESHL. But that's the future. We could have some of those guys move up this year, then be the best players in the AHL, and no one's ever heard of them before, right? Those are things we have to consider. And even too, as new people come back, or as managers do scouting and bring in players that aren't here that are good PlayStation players, we adjust depth of the league, which then allows us to adjust the depth of what we want in management positions. And the same thing too, we're not here to tell people they can't play in the AHL. That's not the case at all. Right. And we're actually not even really saying you can't be management in the AHL, because everyone knows that the second AGM position in the AHL is a player selected after bidding. Right. So we have people that are complaining and up and down us about, I can't believe you said I can't be management, blah blah blah. And I'm like, technically no, I said you can't be a free manager. So if you want to play in the AHL, sign up when NHL bidding goes live. Right. I do it personally. I have to do it. It works better for my schedule. NHL times just don't work for what I want to do. So I always sign up late, play in the AHL. The other consideration is those people, once they're wanting bidding, take the second AGM position. Right. I have no issues with that. If you want to be a manager, be a manager. But be a manager at the value that you're supposed to be, and what's a fair value. And fair value isn't zero for how the league is right now. Hey. And if you want to one day get to that point, well, do scouting, bring in more people, make the league better, bring in better players, so we can get to a point where we can allow more depth to be in those positions, especially in the AHL. Hey,
one quick question about management. Have you guys ever tried or ever toyed with the idea of there being some kind of base salary for a GM and AGM?
So we used to do that in VHL a long time ago, and it's all relevant in the end. Like, there's no real... I guess the only way you could really do it would be like if you said the AHL AGM carries a salary equal to the player's last three seasons in the league averaged out, right? Like something like that, right? So then you could take a player that, so if a player's been $7 million last 3 years in the AHL, and you want him to be your AGM as manager, you can have him, but it's going to cost you $7 million, right? Where everyone else in the league will end up taking a player for free, so they have that advantage going into bidding. So you get to pick your player you want. Yes, it's going to cost you, but it makes me wonder if it's even going to really have a factor. We got rid of all the salaries and stuff for management positions based on the fact that it's all relevant in the end. Okay. So all it really does is it'll just change how much money you can spend in bidding and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I've thought about it a bit, but at the end of the day, is it really worth all the trouble to go through if that's what they want? But maybe that is something we can look at. If there is a player that has been a relatively high-scoring player and has carried a $4 million salary for a couple of years, if you want him as your AGM, so be it, but you pay that average salary. Right. Maybe that is an alternative we could look at down the road as well, too, to allow those people to step into management positions at a value that the league staff and the league players and managers can deem as fair.
Right. And so we talked about we talked about the new teams. That was Biggie wanted to ask about some of that. Let's get on to a couple of other questions. Agent PC had posted, last season we expanded the draft to 4 rounds. Do you feel it had a positive impact, and will we likely see an additional round or 2 this season?
Yeah, that was actually a really big suggestion that a couple of the Xbox owners have been saying for a long time they wanted that. And the reason why they wanted it is because they don't like the 48-game rule we have on Xbox, right, which, by the way, will be implemented likely Season 7. We'll see something change on the CHL side of things in regards to how the draft works out and the minimum game requirement. But they always wanted that extra draft to pick up a steal or pick up a guy. And I kind of like it as well, too, because on the PlayStation side of things, after 15 games, a prospect becomes an amateur. So that doesn't get changed till right before bidding. So pretty much the draft that is coming up for this season will be anyone that ended last season on a PlayStation roster, PlayStation CHL roster with a prospect status will be entered in the draft. Whether you signed up, whether you took management, it doesn't matter. You're in the draft. Right. But once the draft is over, if you have more than 15 games, boom, you become an amateur. So each season we have quite a turnaround in the draft, which can water the draft down, which people could say, well, I don't want to draft a guy in the first round. I'll just take him in bidding for $500K because no one knows who he is, right? So those are the things we're trying to avoid. So what we did on the Xbox side is we said a minimum game requirement would be 48 games. So that 15 then gets bumped to 48, which is technically 2 seasons because they play 8-week seasons, 3 games a week. That's 24 times 2, 48 games. So that's 2 seasons a player would have to play as a prospect in the CHL to become an amateur, which means those players would hit the draft. If you play 2 full seasons, you'd hit the draft twice before you get amateur status. Right. But if you were a player that, you'd say you play 10 games in your first season on the training camp, and then let's say you play, 20 the next season, you can end up seeing the draft obviously more than twice, depending how many seasons you play in the CHL. That's a big benefit to that. So having that system implemented, it only makes sense to offer a 4th round to give more players an opportunity to graduate from that status a lot quicker, right? Which is why we did it. So yeah, this season, I think it's already been done, actually. All the NHL teams should have a 4th round pick because we're going to do another 4th round this season. And we'll likely run a 4th round for season 6, 7, 8. And then maybe look at adding a 5th round come season 9 on NHL 19. But as of right now, yeah, definitely, I do like the 4th round. It has been good. It adds to the draft. It adds value. It adds trade value. It adds all kinds of things, right? So I definitely think that it was a positive adjustment. I know the owners really liked it. They really thought it was a great thing to have. So I'm really looking forward to having that back again this season and for the next few seasons.
Now, you may have already addressed this. I don't remember necessarily talking about this with Vegas, but Agent PC had another question about Vegas. They're getting a fresh start, has no players returning to a roster because they're a new team. So he wants to know, how are you going to even the odds for the new Vegas team management? As you know, the real team is allowed to draft players from current rosters. Can we anticipate something similar for LG Vegas?
So I put a lot of thought into how Vegas is going to work and how it worked in real life and how can that transfer to simulation hockey. And there's been no real good way to do it. Right. Pretty much what we did is we have allowed Vegas gets 2 re-signs out of the re-sign pool for the NHL and for the AHL. So once NHL re-signs are done, Vegas has the option to take 2 players that would be going into bidding and offer them a re-sign and take them. So the Xbox guys did that already. Theirs are done, and they're working on their AHL ones right now. So PlayStation will be no different as well. So that's how it'll work. Is if they want a player off Columbus and a player off Pittsburgh, both of them weren't re-signed by the original team. They will have the opportunity to re-sign those players once those teams are done their 2 re-signs. Or they could re-sign no one, go to bidding with 2 vacant re-signs, which gives them 2 additional contract years to be utilized after bidding, which every single team has the opportunity to do that if they don't use their re-signs. And then AHL's no different. They'll be given the opportunity to re-sign 2 players. Obviously, it's the same rules apply. Those players have to accept the re-sign, and then the actual values would be based on what the player's contract is and our current re-sign rules.
Couple of questions that we got from Prince of Zeus, one of our buddies on the AHL side. Do you think there will be a large number of returning amateur players to offset the slight shortage we saw this past season? And if there isn't, would implementing a 1 or 2 player limit on prospect players on a main roster be a consideration?
Every season we should see more and more amateur players, especially now that the CHL had 60 teams, right? So 15 games, those guys are amateurs. So as long as we have a high enough retention rate, we should see enough amateur players that we shouldn't have an issue in regards to what he's concerned about. Obviously, there always is the opportunity that if we have that issue, we have to look at prospects. It's something I don't want to do. Like, I kind of like to leave the prospects where they are. Right. That gives the CHL what they need to be successful, which is also another reason why I like the 48 game rule, because it gives the CHL an opportunity to keep these people for a couple seasons in a row. No, adding that 48 game rule allows me to say, okay, now you have 4 additional contract years to add after bidding. So CHL teams can kind of build season to season, which brings back retention and CHL ownership, which gives us better owners, which gives us better experience, which builds better players. That's kind of the direction I want to go with the CHL. So the biggest thing too, I think, is what we've done. We as a site, and we as site admin, me and Trish talk about this all the time, have done a really poor job communicating to our players that the season starting again, come sign up, or we've done a bad job of getting retention. Our retention is not very good, and we're looking at different options to get better retention. It's that's one of the big things and one of the big reasons why I really want. There's a bunch of things I wanted, but like one of the big ones would be like I'd like to have the idea of that if we took the Discord API that they have, built it into the site so people could simply link their Discord account to their LG account, like you would with Twitch or like you would with like Twitter or YouTube or whatever it may be, right? Have that option built in. It would give us the opportunity off of the league server to send mass messages to people's Discord accounts. So, and that mass message would just simply be, hey, season 6 of, the LGHL PSN, signups are open now, bidding is in 2 weeks. It just gives us opportunities to send notifications to mass people, to mass players, which is something we don't really have a strong way of doing that right now. I think that would help a lot of retention rates. The other thing too is like scouting seems to be dead. Like no one scouts anymore. No one can be bothered with it. And I think our managers need to do a better job of like telling these players and telling our people like, hey, sign up for LG. Hey, sign up for LG. Season starting soon. Right. Everyone needs to kind of collectively come together and do a better job of informing people that the next season's starting, because we definitely need the signups, or we need people. Or sign up numbers right now are crazy high. I'm actually really happy with how they are. The only thing I haven't looked at is how many of those signups are new players, which are only CHL eligible anyways. So when it comes to retention, I think that there's things that Triz and I are looking at to do and make better, but there's also things our managers need to kind of be reminded about to ensure that these players are coming back sooner than later, right?
Right. Question from the Shoutbox from YouTube, or live chat here on YouTube, from David DaCosta. He says, hey, Brody, season 27 Calder Cup champ here. Do you eventually think LG will become not only a hockey site, but a soccer site, football site, et cetera, or do you think LG will mainly stay a hockey-type site?
I think there's always been talk that, I know Triz's goal is to be the best in everything we do, right? So right. There's definitely room to grow soccer. Soccer's such a crazy sport, and there's a few leagues that kind of do what we do, but soccer is definitely, I think, the place we could grow. But there's no reason why we couldn't think that this site could be more than just hockey. Hockey's my bread and butter, and it's the only thing that I'm truly involved in. And I'm like, and even too, I know Triz and I both are extreme hockey fans, and it's always something we've wanted. So I'm at a point now too, we're looking at other things, looking at expansion again. And when I say expansion again, is we're looking at possibly adding an ESHL Pro Series type league, which is strictly European teams. We're going to see if we can scout some European teams. We see if we can poach some European teams off the EA servers, bring them here, offer them money tournaments. Maybe the first 2 events, or LG will fund the actual prize money, and just to give them a feel of what's going on, because we really want to expand hockey to Europe, which also would give us live streams at all times of the day, right? You'd see a live stream at LG at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because it's 10 o'clock at night in Europe, wherever it may be. So I know I can't really speak in regards to soccer or any other leagues. I can only really talk towards hockey because it's where I'm the most involved. But I definitely see there is potential. It just takes dedication and the right people to be in these positions. It's I don't think people really realize how much work goes into being a site admin or being a commissioner or running a league, and then adding consistency and going through the years and just doing this longer than 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons. There's a lot of work that goes into being where we are and getting to where we're at, and consistency is the biggest base of it. You kind of have to set your 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goals and then try to accomplish them as you go. And it takes a different type of person who has time, who's in the right stage of their life to be able to dedicate this much time to make this work. So I think it's definitely a possibility to bring people in that have that mindset to bring soccer or football or Rocket League or whatever it may be to that level. It all comes down to the dedication of the people that are in those positions.
A couple of other extra questions from some of the guys that we've already mentioned. Any news on a potential swap of Friday Night Puck to a 3-on-3 setup, or are we going to get one night dedicated to that specifically on a day like Thursday or Saturday? What's the plan to work 3-on-3 that's coming out obviously with 18 into some sort of a weekly tournament?
So, I don't think what I can say and what I can't say. So, everyone who played the beta and those who have played early release or who have played the game or whatever it may be, by now should realize that currently, in the game, the only way to play 3-on-3 in a league style would be via the pin system, which is the old way we used to run league. And the issue with doing it via the pin system is there's no goalies.
Right.
So anything we ran 3-on-3 wise for LG at this moment would be through that system, which would mean there is no API for stats, and which would also mean there's no goalies. So if there's still interest in running events, we still have that's our only option at this time. Friday Night Puck, I think, has been a staple for a while, and people like it. It's a lot of fun. But threes is something we could do, and there's no reason why we couldn't do a Saturday or whatever it may be. I like to dedicate the Thursdays to our competitive brand because they kind of deserve it, and I also like to see that competitive brand expand. We've been working really hard on a format, and we have a pretty solid format that's going to be released on Friday about how we're going to run that. But we're not looking short term. We're looking 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan on how we're going to handle all this. And our plan would be eventually to get to a part where it's tiered. So those people that say, I never play in those events because I'm never going to win, would have an opportunity to play at a lower tier that they're competitive at. So it's kind of based on it, kind of like LG, right? Like there's players in the CHL that will never win an AHL championship or will never win an NHL championship. But when they play in their CHL games, they're given that same competitive experience that they want because they're playing against their peers that are equal skill level. There's no reason why we couldn't tier our competitive brand to have tiers like that to allow for those people to play for money against people that are our equal skill level to create that better esports kind of environment. So that's kind of the direction I'm looking at for all of that stuff. Threes has a lot of potential for sure. It's a lot of fun. There's lots of cool things you can do with threes. So there definitely is hope for something in the future to add to LG in regards to 3-on-3. I'm just not sure when that'll be or how we're going to handle it at this current time based on the current state of the game.
It's something I hesitate to ask about, but I'm going to just because I certainly have had some inquiries about it. And I want to approach it maybe this way. In the history of doing this, doing a video game league with NHL, and obviously you have a ton of experience. You and Tris have done this for a long time. As far as the rules are concerned, is there a time period where after a while or is there any trigger that happens that might make you guys say, okay, the game has changed. There has been a lot of expansion. There is so many teams now. Is there a trigger that would make you guys say, okay, we may want to take some time over a season or so to try and to at least relook at the rules and say, okay, are we still good with everything that's here on the PSN side? Is there anything at all like that would trigger that kind of response from LG management, or are you pretty steadfast in how things are right now?
So the rules get looked at three times a year, or three times a game. We look at the rules every season, open to suggestions, take suggestions, give management an opportunity to give their 2 cents. Okay. And even to every season for as long as I've been here, there's something weird will always come up that we kind of go, sure. I never thought of that. Management are like, oh, I never really thought of this. So there's things we have to adjust and get better. So yeah. I think constant evaluation of what we're doing in regards to our rules, our league systems, how we're handling vetting, how we're handling new player information, how we're handling stats or whatever it may be. Constant evaluation, I think, is what sets us apart from every other league. We're never happy with what's going on. We celebrate a lot of small wins, but we celebrate them and they're very, very short-lived because we're on to the next thing that we're trying to do, we're trying to fix, we're trying to get better at. So I think that alone, if there was one factor that made LG better than everyone else, that alone is the one factor. I've come from a profession where constant evaluation and change and stuff is very, very new, and it's very, very progressive, and it's kind of changing the way things at my career are operating now. I think that having the experience and having the members and having the community that we have and the constant evaluation we do is the best way to handle things. it's funny because every single person, not every single person, but people that have disagreements with me or don't like the way things are going always play the, oh, it's a dictatorship, blah, blah, blah card. And I kind of think it's funny and laugh because they don't realize that the rules, the base of the rules I wrote and changed, but a lot of the things that were implemented are things that I never thought of, like compensation for RFA. That's not my idea. That was actually Plymmy. The fourth round of in the draft. That's not my idea. That's Sweet Lou. Like all those things are like little things that we've added. The 12-hour window for bidding. It used to be 18 hours. No, that was something Loops and a bunch of other management brought together and said, let's make bidding quicker. Those are things that I never thought of. Those are things that like my managers or my players came to me and said, let's do this. Same thing too. You look at trade requests for players only being on players who have multiple season contracts. That came from management. That's not my idea. Mm-hmm. So as much as I get credit for how the league's going and stuff, there's a lot of things that have changed and adapted and got better over time simply because we have that experience and we have this process that allows us to constantly evaluate and get better and better. Same thing too. I know when we changed the Zenforo, Triz was looking for suggestions and ideas. And I was like, let's put a Shoutbox in every single league. And he told me I was crazy. He was like, that's ridiculous. Like, that's a ton of work. It's not going to work. People won't use it, blah, blah, blah. And now look at how every single league has its own Shoutbox and how active each individual league is. And I think that overall, those individual leagues having a Shoutbox has actually made the site more active because people aren't stuck to the one chat box fighting for airtime and they kind of stick with their own peers, right? So it's just things like that a constant evaluation of what we're doing and what our goals are is what really sets us apart and really makes us better. And that comes from every single aspect of the league. Like, we sat down, I had a PM with a bunch of top ESHL players, and we kind of sat down and picked apart, what our pro series or our competitive league is going to look like. And it was 23 pages within 24 hours. Like, it was crazy how much feedback we got. We picked that whole league apart. We picked a structure we think is going to work, and that's what we're going to go with. And it's all based on feedback from the community. And even too, that same feedback I think is what goes to EA on so many different levels as well too. Like during the beta, EA had 4 dedicated members of their staff that were just watching streams, and one or two of those guys were literally on LG every day, looking at the thread I posted, reading your feedback in the Shoutbox, watching streams in LG. They literally were on the site every single day, the entire time the beta was live. And sometimes there was 3 of them on the site. So I think that system and how we handle things, I think, is what is constantly always going on. We're never at a point where we're saying, okay, we're done. Our work here is done, kind of thing, right? So,
you mentioned ESHL, and there you certainly have. You've talked about it a lot recently. You've posted to folks what you guys are looking to do with that down the road, and how you're trying to build towards something with that. I think if I'm trying to read some of the feedback that I've seen, I think guys we're hoping for a little more on the on what is the Pro Series now, and they certainly have some issues with that. How do you address any of the shortcomings with the Pro Series to make sure that that is that's not something that you're going to have to deal with ESHL and the growth of that, which I think I agree with you. I think that's a good part of the future of gaming, and I think a lot of these guys who have been playing in the league, trying to get them involved in it after they've been playing on a relatively free site for them, it's hard to get some of those involved. So there are a lot of complaints about that. But how do you, what lessons have you learned from Pro Series, and how do you improve that going into something like ESHL?
I think the biggest thing with that is the fact that there's a ton of people there's a ton of opinions, right? So it kind of goes back to that same argument we had and the same discussion we had earlier, where you have to come to a point in time where like a decision has to be made, and you have to realize that you can't please everyone.
Sure.
But at the same time, and no knocks to anyone who's ever ran any event here, because kudos to you guys. You have a total understanding of what I go through weekly, daily, monthly to ensure that we have what we have here. It's a lot of work. I think when it comes to the Pro Series stuff, the direction we're going now. So on the PlayStation side of things, John LOL is going to be like a big factor in ensuring that there's consistency in the PlayStation side, and the Xbox side of things, I'll be running myself as well too. but overall I'll be overseeing all of it, is just consistency. And it's also nice to have someone who's managing and running these events that isn't competing in these events. Now that makes a big difference. Especially when you put money on the line, it's hard to say no one has a personal bias, because everyone has their own personal bias, right? But
sure,
when you put money on the line, it's nice to know that the people that are involved in it or are running it, making these big decisions, aren't competing for the same prize. That's one of the biggest things I've learned, and then that's no knock on any of the people that have ran in these events before, because that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is I think that whether those people had bias or made decisions, people are always that's the first claim they're gonna make. So at least when it comes now, if something happens and a decision comes directly from me, I have no benefit of the outcome. Like, it's not like your team lost the game, now my team's in the playoffs, and now I get to compete for the money when I shouldn't have, because I'm not even playing in the event. That's one of the biggest things I wanted to take away. The other thing too is I've kind of adopted my LGHL format of, like, I wanted more feedback from the people that are playing in these events. The guys that are taking part in these events, I wanted to hear from them directly. No holds bar, no feelings hurt. Just tell me how you feel. Like, what did you like? What didn't you like? What do you want to see changed? And just really give it to me. Tell me what you want. Because at the end of the day, like, I don't care per se how many games are played a week, what time the games are, when it is. I don't care if they want to play 3-on-3, 4-on-4, no goalies. I don't care how they want to play. At the end of the day, I just want those teams to compete in something they want to compete in, based on the suggestions that they had and what they want, to create the best experience possible. So my role in those leagues and those events is more of as a moderator, to give them something to do and somewhere to play. I'm not there to be anything other than, I have some ideas and things I wanted to improve on as well too. So I did have some influence, but a lot of the influence of how these events are going to be ran comes strictly from the community that plays in these events. And that's a big, big change, I think, that people really wanted. And I think that accompanied with the fact that these events will be hosted by by LG, by me, I'll be handling a lot of the issues. I think that'll be a big thing too, because I have no personal benefit to who wins or who loses these events.
I guess we should get wrapping up here soon. But let me ask you this. I mean, considering where we are now after 5 seasons in PSN, we talked. I remember talking, I think, back before season 3, after season 2. Some of the thoughts and ideas and where you wanted to go with CHL, and that's happened. We got out to 60 teams this past season. The progress of the PSN side in general. Are you satisfied with how things are going so far, and where do you think you feel like we need to go? What are the next steps for PSN hockey anyway?
The NHL is where I want it to be. It's funny, like this season there wasn't a lot of issues. Like, there was a few weird things happened, and a few owners had sour grapes based on a few decisions, but there's nothing major that sticks out in my mind that happened this season in the NHL. It was competitive. It worked well. Forfeits were okay. They were slightly under 3% of the games ended in forfeits, but the forfeit numbers were less on PlayStation than they were on the Xbox side at the NHL level, which is something I think they should be proud of as well, and I'm happy with as well. The AHL, I think I'd like to see the AHL just gain more depth, either via the draft or via players moving up, or I'd like to see I'd like to see our top AHL players stay and stick around, and then our top CHL players over time and managers over time move up to kind of make the AHL a little bit more competitive and a little more balanced and a little bit better. I'd also like to see just the overall participation from our AHL managers a little bit more than what it was in past seasons. There's oftentimes important things that'll be posted by me, and 24 to 48 hours later, it has 16 views. When I know there's 90 people that have access to view that, right? It was pushed as an alert or whatever it may be, but only has 16, 17 views, and 2 of those are probably me checking it, right? So I'd like to see a little more activity in regards to that type of stuff, especially from those managers. And even too, I can't think of a specific situation, but I know each season there's something that happens that will piss off a manager because they made the wrong decision, what ends up in a result that a really negative result that affects their team really poorly. And at the end of the day, I feel really shitty that team has to go through that. But at the same time, I'm like, that could have been avoided if you were a little bit more active on the site, and a little bit more active with me and staff, and kind of work through these issues and ask questions and got better. And I just hope that it will be a little bit more personal development and initiative for personal development at that tier, just to make it better. And then at the CHL level, staff is is a big part of it, right? And, John Sheldon did a really good job, and he's just a really busy guy.
Right.
And he did a really good job to get the CHL where it is, but it got to a point in time where the torch had to be passed, and he had to step away. And I hope he's doing well and all is well with him. But now that we have a consistent CHL staff, and we have a big enough CHL staff that's comprised of Rock is a really solid guy. He's been coached and trained well enough that we think he's going to do really well at that level, as that director. And we have a couple of new BOG that were CHL managers, which I think is a big thing to help us, because those guys have been there, done that, have experience with the tools, have experience with building teams, which will be able to allow those new CHL owners to relate in regards to issues they're dealing with when they're talking to those BOG.
Right.
And then, like I said, the 48 game rule is, we're knocking on that door sooner than later. I'd like to implement that, then give them a few contract years they could issue after bidding, kind of get them to build a little bit of a dynasty at a time. Obviously, it's the lowest tier, and those players can be drafted at any time. So, that's something they have to be aware of. But, at the same time, I think that it's heading in the right direction. I just like to, by NHL 19, I'd like to see, a lot of these things change. Have the CHL a little bit more competitive, AHL a little bit more competitive. I'd like to see the talent tier out a little bit better. And then, obviously have the CHL consistent, where we're offering, they have a small contract system, they have things to work towards, and they also, allow us to have CHL owners want to return because they have the tools to kind of build from season to season. That's kind of where I'm sitting at right now in regards to hockey for the LGHL on the PlayStation side of things.
All right, well, Brody, anything else you want to add before we take off here? I think we hit every question that we got from the folks, especially all the stuff with the new teams. I don't have anything else myself. If you have any closing thoughts, feel free to put them out there.
Yeah, so like I said, everything's up and running right now. If you're an AHL manager, just give it time. Haji and the staff are working really hard to get those AHL approvals done. You should have your access sooner than later. If you're on Discord and you want to add me, feel free to add me. I posted it all over the website already too, so by any means, add me if you have any questions, you need to talk to me, or send me a PM on the site. I've kind of officially moved everything I'm doing to either the website PMs or the Discord. So if you have a question that can wait, send me a PM. I'll get to it when I can. If it's something that's urgent, Discord's where you can find me. I'm on there all the time as well. And over the next couple weeks, especially if you're a manager coming in, there's going to be a lot of things posted on the website. So please be sure to take the time to read it and take some initiative and learn these things, learn these tools, learn the systems as we improve and get better. I think it's only going to make everything better for everyone. It's pretty exciting times. 18 plays a lot better than 17. Like I said, you are going to notice a few buggy things when you get the game tonight. But have no fear. There tends to be, every year there tends to be patches and updates in September. I think NHL 17 had three tuners in September. So just keep that in mind when you're playing the game, and have fun. And hopefully this next season of PlayStation will be just as good or better than the last few ones we've had.
Brody, again, thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
We are getting ready to get NHL 18 going. As you see on the clock, 56 minutes now left to go before we go live with this. We thank LG McDonald here for his time tonight. This has been Ask LG, and we hope you enjoyed the show. We've got a broadcast coming up in a little while to play this game, and hopefully you'll be able to be with us to enjoy that broadcast. Until then, TSibs saying so long, and we will talk to you in a little while with another broadcast.